Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are looking ahead to the readings for Sunday, February 15th, 2026, which is the sixth Sunday in Ordinary Time.
Mhm.
And we are tackling a massive block of text today. Our focus is the gospel passage, Matthew chapter 5, verses 17 through 37.
We are right in the heart of the Sermon on the Mount with this one. We've moved past the Beatitudes and the, salt and light metaphors.
Right.
Now we're getting into the heavy machinery of Jesus' ethical teaching.
It's a section often titled The Completion of the Law, and honestly, it reads like a legal revolution.
It really does.
Usually when we talk about religious rules, we have this sort of cultural baggage of a checklist. Do X, don't do Y, and you're safe. It feels administrative.
It feels controllable.
Yeah.
That's the appeal of a checklist, right?
Yeah.
You know exactly where the line is, so you can walk right up to it without crossing it.
But this text just destroys that comfort zone. Jesus isn't offering a new checklist. He's essentially rewiring the entire operating system of human behavior. So I think the mission for this deep dive has to be understanding that shift, how he claims to complete the law, not by abolishing it, but by making it, well, impossibly demanding.
Impossibly demanding is exactly the right phrase. He takes the external standard, what you do with your hands, and he drives it into the internal standard.
What you do with your will.
What you do with your will, your heart.
Okay, so let's start with his opening thesis. He says, "Do not imagine that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to complete them."
And this is so crucial because in the first century, Jesus sounded like a radical. When a new teacher arrives with a new kingdom, the expectation is, well, it's regime change.
Right, new management, new rules.
Exactly. You expect him to tear down the old statutes.
But he doubles down. He says, "Till heaven and earth disappear, not one dot, not one little stroke shall disappear from the law until its purpose is achieved."
He's talking about the yod. It's the smallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet, basically a comma, and the kariah, those little decorative hooks on the letters.
Right.
He's telling his listeners, I am not here to loosen the requirements. I am here to fulfill the architecture of the law down to the microscopic level.
And then he drops the statement that must have just sucked the air out of the room. He gives a benchmark for entry into his kingdom. He says, "If your virtue goes no deeper than that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never get into the kingdom of heaven."
We have to pause here. We really do, because modern listeners, we hear Pharisees and we immediately think hypocrite or villain. We read the end of the story back into the beginning.
Totally.
But to a first-century Jewish audience, the Pharisees were the heroes.
They were the gold standard.
They were the spiritual special forces. Like, these were men who didn't just follow the Ten Commandments. They followed 613 specific mitzvot. They built what they called a fence around the Torah.
A fence.
Yeah, so if the law said don't work on the Sabbath, they defined work down to the number of steps you could take, just to ensure they never even accidentally offended God.
So when Jesus says you have to be better than them, he isn't saying don't be a fake.
No, not at all.
He's saying, you see that guy? The one who tithes on the mint, leaves in his garden, and prays 5 times a day. You have to surpass him.
Which just creates a crisis for the listener. If the Olympians of real following aren't getting in, who is?
And that's where the completion comes in. Jesus argues that the Pharisees' righteousness, it was extensive, sure, but it was horizontal.
Right, it was all about behavior management.
And Jesus is demanding a vertical depth. He wants the heart.
And he proves it by using this formula. It's called the antitheses. 6 times in this passage, he uses the structure. You have learned how it was said to our ancestors, but I say this to you.
Okay, let's look at the first one. Murder. The old rule is, you must not kill. And if anyone does kill, he must answer for it before the court.
A very clear civil statute. It limits the damage.
Simple.
As long as the body count is 0, you are a law-abiding citizen.
But Jesus weaponizes it. He says, anyone who is angry with his brother will answer for it before the court. He's equating the emotion of anger with the act of murder.
Because in the logic of the kingdom, anger is the seed of murder. If you are harboring anger, you have already killed that person in your heart.
You just haven't had the opportunity.
Or the courage to execute the act.
And the text gets incredibly specific here with the insults. It mentions calling a brother fool or renegade.
The Greek terms here are just fascinating. The first level is just anger, that internal simmering that gets you to the court or judgment.
Okay.
The next step is calling someone raka. It's an Aramaic term of abuse that basically means empty-headed or spit. You're dismissing someone's intellectual worth.
And the text says that gets you to the Sanhedrin.
Which is the Supreme Court of Israel, the Council of 71. So Jesus is saying, if you call your brother an idiot, you deserve a capital trial.
Wow. Then there's the third level. Calling someone renegade, or in some translations, you fool, using the word more.
More is much heavier than raka. It implies moral rebellion or godlessness. It's a complete attack on someone's soul.
And for that,
For that, Jesus says you answered a hellfire.
the word he uses isn't just a generic hell, though, is it?
No, not at all. He uses Gehenna. And it was a literal place, the Valley of Hinnom, south of Jerusalem. It was the city dump.
City dump.
Yeah, where trash and sewage were burned. It was a place of perpetual smoldering and decay. He's saying that character assassination, destroying a person's reputation with your words, it puts your own soul in the trash heap.
Which leads right into the altar scenario, which I think is one of the most practical and disruptive commands in the Bible. If you are bringing your offering to the altar, and remember that your brother has something against you, leave your offering there. Go and be reconciled.
Just imagine the scene. You are in the temple, it's crowded, it smells of incense and livestock. You've waited in line, you have your sacrifice. This is the holiest moment of your week.
And then you remember.
You remember you snapped at your neighbor.
The religious thing to do would be to ignore it, offer the sacrifice, and feel holy.
But Jesus says the liturgy stops. He is prioritizing horizontal reconciliation over vertical worship. In fact, he's arguing that you cannot have vertical worship if that horizontal line is broken.
God doesn't want your gift if you're holding a grudge.
He doesn't. It effectively says you can't use church as a bypass for being a decent human being.
It creates this tremendous urgency, too. He follows it with that metaphor of settling with an opponent while you are still on the way.
Right, or you will be thrown into prison and not get out until the last penny is paid.
That's dire.
It's a warning about the compounding interest of sin. If you don't deal with conflict immediately, it grows. It imprisons you. You pay for it emotionally, spiritually, relationally.
Okay, let's move to the second antithesis. Adultery. The old rule, do not commit adultery. Again, a clear boundary. Don't sleep with someone who isn't your spouse.
But Jesus shifts the location of the sin again. If a man looks at a woman lustfully, he has already committed adultery with her in his heart.
He's indicting the gaze. The fantasy is a betrayal.
He is destroying the concept of the victimless sin. We like to think, well, I looked, but I didn't touch, so nobody got hurt. Jesus says you got hurt. Your integrity was fractured. You reduced a human being to an object of consumption in your mind. That is adultery.
And this triggers the most violent imagery in the New Testament. If your right eye should cause you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. Same for the right hand. Cut it off.
People often rush to call this hyperbole, oh, Jesus is just exaggerating for effect. And, I mean, while it is hyperbole, he doesn't want a church full of amputees. Labeling it as such can be a way to dodge the point.
Yeah, it feels like a cop-out to just say it's a metaphor and move on.
It is. The question is, why that specific metaphor? He's talking about value. He says it is better to lose a member than for the whole body to be thrown into hell. He's doing a cost-benefit analysis.
He's saying your spiritual integrity is worth more than your physical wholeness.
Exactly. And it implies a need for what we might call radical surgery. If there is a habit, a device, a relationship, or a specific environment that causes you to stumble, you don't manage it.
You don't negotiate with it.
You amputate it.
It's a difference between treating cancer with aspirin versus surgery. Yeah. The Pharisees treat the symptoms. Jesus cuts out the tumor.
That is a perfect analogy.
Okay.
And notice, he targets the right eye and right hand. In the ancient world, the right side was the side of power, of authority, of honor.
Oh, that's interesting.
He's saying, I don't care how important this thing makes you feel or how much power it gives you. If it corrupts you, it has to go.
Now we get to a section that usually makes everyone in the room tense up. Divorce.
We have to handle this one carefully, but we also can't just skip it. The text says, everyone who divorces his wife, except for the case of fornication, makes her an adulteress.
To understand why this was so radical, we need the context of the debate happening at the time. The Hillel versus Shammai debate, right?
Right. Precisely. In the first century, you had these two schools of thought on Deuteronomy 24, which allowed for a certificate of dismissal. The school of Shammai was strict. You could only divorce for serious sexual immorality.
Okay.
But the school of Hillel was incredibly lenient. A man could divorce his wife if she burned his dinner.
If she burned his dinner, seriously.
Even if you have found someone prettier, yes. It reduced marriage to this tenuous contract where the woman was essentially disposable property, she had no economic power. A divorce certificate was often a sentence to poverty or prostitution.
So when Jesus restricts divorce, he isn't just being a hardliner. He's standing in defense of the vulnerable.
He is closing the loophole that allowed men to discard their wives for any cause. He is elevating marriage from a contract of convenience to a covenant of, well, ontological unity. He's saying, you can't just separate what God has joined because you're bored or angry.
It fits the pattern perfectly, doesn't it? The law provided a way out the certificate.
Yep.
Jesus demands a way in faithfulness.
It creates this massive burden of responsibility. He says if you divorce her without a valid cause, you make her an adulteress. You force her into a situation where she has to remarry to survive, and that breaks the original bond. He puts the weight of the sin on the one who initiates the break.
Finally, we arrive at the fourth antithesis: oaths. Do not swear at all.
This one seems less intense than the amputation stuff, but it's actually the glue holding the whole ethical system together.
The old rule was, perform your oaths to the Lord. If you promised God something, you had to do it.
But the culture had developed this elaborate hierarchy of swearing. If I swore by heaven, it was binding. If I swore by earth, maybe less so. If I swore by Jerusalem or by my own head, it was a way of creating wiggle room.
It reminds me of reading the terms and conditions on a website. It's pages of text designed to obscure a simple truth.
Or when we say, I swear on my mother's life, we use those intensifiers because we know our simple word isn't trusted. We know on some level we are liars.
Well,
And Jesus just cuts through all that legalism and says, all you need to say is yes if you mean yes, no if you mean no.
anything more than this comes from the evil one. That is a stark line.
It connects complexity with evil. Satan is the father of lies, and lies need complexity to survive. Truth is simple. Jesus is envisioning a community of such profound integrity that if you say, I'll be there at 5, nobody questions it.
You don't need a
You
contract.
don't need to swear an oath. Your character is the guarantee.
So when we pull back and look at this whole sweep, murder, adultery, divorce, oaths, what is the portrait of the disciple that emerges here?
It's a terrifying portrait, to be honest. It's
Yeah.
a person who has no private life where sin can hide.
The Pharisees had a public life and a private life. They looked good on the street corner.
And Jesus is erasing that divide. He's saying that the thought is as real as the action, the lust is as real as the affair, the anger is as real as the murder. He's demanding a unified self.
It goes right back to that word complete. He didn't come to abolish the law. He came to fulfill it. And he fulfilled it by moving it from the courtroom to the heart.
And that explains why the standard is so impossibly high. You can police actions, you can put cameras up to stop murder. You can't put a camera in the human heart. Only the Spirit can govern that space.
Which brings us back to the date. Sunday, February 15th, 2026. When we hear this read in church, it is so easy to feel crushed by it, to think, I've been angry, I've lusted, I've lied.
But if you feel crushed, you're understanding the text.
Yeah.
The Sermon on the Mount is meant to shatter our self-righteousness. It's meant to make us realize that we cannot Pharisee our way into heaven. We need a new heart.
Which is what the new covenant promises.
Exactly.
So here's a final provocation for you to take with you. We all have our own little fences. We build the rules we follow to convince ourselves we're good people. You know, I donate to charity, or I go to church, or I don't cheat on my taxes.
The external checklist.
Right. But if you stripped away that checklist and looked only at the internal reality, your unexpressed anger, your secret glances, your half-truths, what would your spiritual audit look like? And more importantly, are you willing to bring that mess to the altar for reconciliation rather than just the shiny exterior?
That is the invitation. To stop managing the symptoms and let the surgeon operate on the heart.
Before we sign off, I'd like to invite you to pause. Let's take a moment to turn this very heavy teaching into a prayer. Lord Jesus, you came not to abolish the law, but to complete it in our hearts. Help us to look beyond the surface of our actions and examine our true intentions. Grant us the grace to seek reconciliation before worship, to purify our thoughts, and to speak the truth with simplicity. Let our yes mean yes, and guide us to a righteousness that flows from a heart aligned with yours. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.